Welcome, everyone, to Westcliff University's Distinguished Innovator Speaker Series. In this inspiring talk, we'll learn about the who, what, why, and how of innovation. And I believe we'll see innovation in a whole new way. And most importantly, we'll discover the ability to become an innovator. Leo Chan's presentation, Yes, You Can Innovate, is listed as one of the top 10 presentations at the 2023 World Business Executive Coaching Summit. So this is a real treat for us. We're going to get to Leo very shortly. I'm Dr. Barry Sanders, Senior Director of Entrepreneurship at Westcliff University and your moderator this morning. I'm really happy you're able to join us, and we'll get to Leo, as I said, in just a moment. But first, I want to briefly introduce Westcliff University to those in the webinar audience who might not be familiar with the institution. Pictured here is our campus in Irvine, California. Westcliff is an accredited private institution of higher learning with over 6,000 students enrolled both live, online, and on campus. There are 4 colleges: the College of Business, the College of Education, College of Law, and the College of Technology and Engineering. We also offer a full stack coding bootcamp certificate and a cybersecurity bootcamp certificate. To learn more about Westcliff, including our awesome undergraduate athletic program, I invite you to visit our website at westcliff.edu, as well as Westcliff University on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Now to our speaker. With over 20 years of experience in the world of innovation and creativity, Leo is a highly sought-after speaker on the subject. He's inspired and coached innovators with his ability to unleash innovative ideas and practices that guide leaders to stay ahead of the competition. As the founder of Abound Innovation Inc., former senior innovative leader at Chick-fil-A and former innovator at State Farm Insurance, Leo has harnessed his unique skill sets as an expert in innovation and creativity to both identify and raise up future innovators. Along with an insatiable curiosity as a lifelong learner, Leo's creativity and innovation skills have him named as an inventor on 41 U.S. patents. Leo, welcome.
Thank you so much, Barry. I'm excited to be here today to speak to all of you on my favorite topic, innovation.
Please, the stage is yours.
All right, let me share my screen. So you're here for Yes, You Can Innovate, and I hope you really enjoy this talk. So I want to start off the talk with a quick story. So there were 2 employees who had an idea for over 20 years at a national bank in the United States. And this idea sat with them for 20 years. And what happened was a VP of innovation came along and created a hackathon opportunity for them. And so if you don't know what a hackathon is, you can actually submit your ideas, and if it gets selected, it will actually be implemented. And guess what happened? Their idea got selected for the hackathon, and it was greenlit to actually be implemented, which is really exciting. And in their first week of launch, their idea reached tens of thousands of customers. And this idea sat for 20 years with them. This is incredible, right? Yes, but it's also sad too, and I'm going to tell you why. What would the impact to the business have been if that idea had been implemented 20 years prior? And why, oh why, did this idea sit with these 2 employees for over 20 years? Change happened when the new VP of innovation came along and empowered those employees to innovate. So that was by the way of the hackathon. He didn't create the ideas. Those 2 ideas sat with those 2 employees for 20 years. But he empowered them with the ability to innovate through the hackathon. And I believe stories like this exist in every single organization. Anybody can be an innovator, but not everyone is. People want to innovate, but don't know how. I want you to imagine if your business was flowing with the abundance of new ideas. I want you to imagine if every single aspect of your business was transformed by the power of innovation. And I want you to imagine if your business was full of innovators. I believe all of this is possible. So in the quick time that we have today, here's our journey. I'm going to talk about what is innovation, why it's needed, what do innovators do, who can innovate, examples of everyday innovation, and then I'm going to leave you with some actionable steps on how you can get started on your journey. So let's talk about this. What is innovation? And now, before I get there, I want to talk about what I hear all the time. I hear this all the time. I'm not an innovator. And so I want to tell you a quick story. I met this woman who worked for who used to work for Nestle, and then she was a director in a startup organization. And so we were having a conversation one day, and she's telling me, she's like, what's really cool? She said, I created a product for Nestle that outlived my career there, that was still on the retail shelves as the time of our conversation. And she's like, but I'm not an innovator. And I'm like, what? I'm like, you created a product for Nestle that outlived your career, that's still on the retail shelves today, and you're not an innovator? And she's like, no. And I'm like, let me be the first person to tell you you are an innovator. And she was blown away. Like, she was like, really? I'm like, yes, of course. And so, the reason why people say this is because there's misinformation about what an innovator does. Here's another thing that I always hear. I'm not creative. So I also hear this phrase a lot because we typically think of the word creative or creativity as in the arts, the fine arts, right? So the musicians, the writers, the dancers, the painters. And so if we're not one of those people, therefore I'm not creative. And and that's the same with innovator, right? If I'm not a certain type of person, then I'm not an innovator. So I want to talk to you about what innovation isn't before we talk about what it is. So first of all, innovation is not technology. And this is a common misconception because we tend to think that innovation is only technology related, or it has to be technology related. Technology is technology. Innovation is innovation. So it can utilize technology, but it doesn't mean you have to use technology. Innovation also is not just what I call big I innovation. And we think of innovation generally as these really big disruptive things. So for example, the taxi industry and ride sharing, right? The Ubers and Lyfts that completely disrupted the taxi industry. We think they have to be these huge disruptive things. And while it can be that, it's not just big I innovation. And then lastly, innovation is not just for the few. So we can think of like, I'm not like Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, I'm not sending people to Mars. And so we can tend to think that innovation is just for special people. They're just born with it. And that isn't me either. So what is innovation? Innovation is for everyone. Innovation is for everyone. Anyone can learn how to innovate. And innovation is everywhere. So I'm actually going to share with you some examples on how you can see this around you. They're everyday examples. And then thirdly, innovation is learnable. Innovation is learnable. So it's actually a teachable skill set and mindset that anyone can learn. So let's define it. What is innovation? Here's a definition that I made for innovation, which is innovation is creating a new future by transforming ideas into value. Innovation is creating a new future by transforming ideas into value. And I want to unpack this for you a little bit. So here's an error about the word new. So the future is happening whether you like it or not, right? Tomorrow is going to happen. I can either like that future or I might not like it. And so innovation allows any of us to create a different future that we want, right? And I like to say, why not take agency over that and make it the future that you want, right? So instead of just letting tomorrow be tomorrow, let's put a stake in the sand and say, hey, I want to see a future and I'm going to make that happen. All right. Here's the word where the word creativity sneaks in. So the ideas part is creativity. If you have the ability to generate ideas, you are a creative person. And all of us in this webinar today have the ability to create ideas. So ideas and creativity are essential in innovation. And then here, the word transforming, so we transform ideas into value. There's a process by which we do that. And I call this the innovation process. I'll unpack this for you later, but there's something that we have to do with ideas. Ideas by themselves are not innovation. We actually have to do something with them. And value is something meaningful. It doesn't necessarily have to be return on investment, doesn't necessarily have to be financial, but it's something meaningful to the problem that we're solving for. And so it looks kind of like this. So creativity is at the front end of this innovation story. We need creativity in order to generate the ideas, which fuels through the innovation process. And by that, we will deliver value. So that is what innovation is, creating a new future by transforming ideas into value. All right, so now that we know what innovation is, let's talk about why it's needed. There are a host of reasons why innovation is needed, but I'll give you 2 reasons today. The first one is that it actually helps us de-risk the unknown. So whenever we start anything new, there's a lot of unknown factors, right? We just started something. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't even know what we're working on. So there's a lot of risk that comes when we start innovating. And what you're hoping to see is by the time you get to implementation, that risk is at the lowest point, right? It makes sense. We don't want to implement stuff with high amount of risk. And it's through the innovation process or using innovation that we can actually help start to de-risk all those factors when we start. What's interesting, conversely, is financially, when we start off any new project, we don't really invest a lot of our resources, right? We just got, say, your boss just comes up to you and says, hey, I want you to work on this thing. You haven't invested a lot of time, but over time, that investment increases. You'll spend more money, you'll spend more people hours on it, right? There'll be more employees working on it. So that investment tricks up. And what you're hoping to do is by the time you go to launch or implementation, you want the lowest amount of risk when your investment is the highest, right? So you want to de-risk the unknown and maximize your investments. And so that's what innovation can actually help us. It's to be strategic with de-risking and maximizing our investment, which gives us confidence over this period of time. So as you move through this, you'll gain confidence over this process. The second reason why innovation is really needed is because no one is safe from disruption. So I don't know if you know this, but 52% of Fortune 500 companies from the year 2000 are extinct. Over 52%. That is over half of these humongous companies that did incredible things are completely gone. And 50 years ago, the average life of a Fortune 500 brand was 61 years, and now it's less than 18. This is a third of the lifespan of what these companies used to be. Right? So no one is safe from disruption. Let me give you some examples that you may be familiar with. So you remember the company called Kodak? So they existed from 1889 until the year 2012. And they were at once the world's biggest film company, but they couldn't keep up with the digital revolution. And so they actually held back from developing the digital camera because of fear of the mass market. And what's really interesting, if you didn't know this, Kodak was the first company to create the digital camera. But they didn't want their sales to be cannibalized by the digital camera, so they held back on it. And then guess what happened? They filed for bankruptcy in 2012, and now they're a slide that I'm talking about. So Kodak wasn't able to shift with new possibilities and things like that. How about taxis? When was the last time you took a taxi? So in 2014, a New York medallion, the right to own a taxi in New York City, it was valued at over $1 million. So for you to have the right to operate a taxi in New York City in 2014, the valuation was over $1 million. That's a lot of money, right? So at the time, the rental cars were 55% of ground professional transportation, taxis was 37%, ride hailing was 8%. Look at what happens 4 years later. In 2018, the valuation of the right to own a taxi in New York City dropped to $170,000. That's over 80% drop in their valuation. So, and then by this time, ride hailing now occupies 70.5% of the market. Taxis were 6%, rental cars 23.5%. And then as recently as 2021, the right to own a taxi was as low as $25,000. This is 98% less than what it was originally worth, right? And so what these two stories show us is that we disrupt or we be disrupted. And the choice is actually up to all of us. So we can choose whether we want to disrupt and be the leader or be disrupted by Uber and Lyft or things like that may happen to us. Okay, so let's now talk about what do innovators do? It's kind of a trick question because I told you the definition, but they see and create a new future. So innovators are people that are able to see a different narrative from the present. They might be unhappy with what they see, and they are actually able to not only see it, but they're the ones to actually create it. They bring that future that they see into fruition. And so, in other words, what they do is they disrupt status quo, aka the present. So they're saying no to today for a better future that they see tomorrow. Now, I want to talk to you about some of the attributes of innovators. Attributes, so they're very open-minded. Innovators love to learn. There's possibilities are endless. There's all things that could be possible in their minds. They're also highly curious. So innovators ask tons of questions all the time, just like kids, right? They ask they're highly curious. They're always wondering why things are happening. They're wondering why things aren't happening. They're highly, highly curious people. They're also experimenters and tinkerers. So they like to try things. They like to kind of their hands dirty and get in there and see what happens. They're okay with taking risks, right? They're willing to take risks to just see what happens. And there are people that really love solving problems. Innovators love solving problems. So if you're someone like this, you might have some of that innovative potential. But if you love to solve problems, this is what innovators love. They also love to collaborate. So pretty much all the time, innovators will come up with these visions for the future that are bigger and grander than they are. And so they know that they need to collaborate with other people in order to see that dream come to fruition. So they collaborate with people with different skill sets, different industries in order to bring the work forward. They are also really great observers. They notice things. So they might see things that everyone sees, but nobody stops to think about them in more detail. They might not stop to think about how to create a new feature with that. So they're really good at observation and seeing things that we might just kind of turn a blind eye to. And they also see possibilities, right? So they can see that feature. They're visionaries. Any innovator is a visionary because they're creating a new future. They're able to see a different narrative and then see that come to life. And they, of course, are people that think differently, right? If in order to see a possibility, you need to think differently than the current status quo. And then lastly, innovators are highly creative. All right, I want you to think about this list and I want you to think about yourself. Do you have any of these attributes yourself? Are you open-minded? Are you curious? So on and so forth. I want you to just look at this list right now. And if you want, write it down. But I'd love to know if you have any of these characteristics. And my gut is that you do. Okay. My gut is that you have some of these. We are all creative. So even if you don't think you're creative, you are creative. And so you have innovative potential. You have innovative potential. All right. So now let's ask the question, who can innovate? I want you to think about this. Have you ever created a new future? Have you ever created a new future? If you answered yes, you have innovated. Simple as that. And so what this really says is that everyone can be an innovator. And yes, that means you on this call right now. All right. And the way you learn how to be an innovator is by learning, I call this innovation thinking. So the mindsets of innovation and innovation doing, the skill sets of innovation. So you might be thinking, really, Leo? Well, I don't want you to just take my word for this. I want you to meet a friend of mine. Her name is Sydney. And when I met her, she was a content manager. And so I was leading a session, an innovation workshop for an organization, and Sydney was one of the participants. And as I was leading the meeting and facilitating the conversation, I noticed that she had really sharp, innovative skills. Like I could tell that she's like, she had different ideas. She was a sharp thinker and all of that type of thing. And so after that meeting, I reached out to Sydney and I said, hey, could I chat with you? And she's like, yeah, sure. And I told her about a program that I was leading that turned employees into innovators. And I said, I think you'd be really perfect for this, this program. Would you like to join? And she was emphatic. She was like, yes. And she joined this program that I had created. And she was so vocal about how happy she was to be there. She was like, I feel seen. I'm with my people. I'm no longer a unicorn. And so I was so surprised by her reaction. I had a conversation with her. I'm like, could you unpack for me what's going on with you? And she's like, yes, of course. And she's like, I drew a Venn diagram of myself. And she said, this is me over here. These are, my skills and my passions. And this is work over here. And what she said was, throughout my career, I've always hoped that myself and my work could kind of just bump into each other. I wanted to bring all my ideas, my creativity, and I was just hoping that they would collide at some point. And she said, until I met you and you showed me that all this innovation, quality, and potential that I have actually could be applied fully to my work. And this was such a powerful visual to me of the transformation that it can happen when you realize that you can innovate and you learn how to do it. There is power. And when you align your passions and skill to your work, there is fulfillment and meaning. And when you know you can innovate, I want you to be ready to be amazed. And you not only will you be amazed at the things that you're able to do, but so will your team, your department, and your organization, because you will step into the ability to innovate in completely new ways, and you will do things that you never dreamed of. Okay, so now let's talk about some examples of everyday innovation. So there's a company called Van Moof. They are a Dutch e-bike company, if you've never heard of them. And in 2016, they decided to start shipping their products to the United States. But the problem with this was they were finding that over 25% of their products were being damaged on arrival. So this was even before they were shipping it to their customers. This was just getting it from Europe over to the US. And so to address this problem, the Van Moof team asked, what do Americans really love? What would prompt couriers to be more delicate with the parcel? Because this was costing them a lot of money. So, what do Americans really love? Do you know what their answer was? They decided that it was televisions. So like TVs, if it's televisions, they'll probably take really good care of it. So this is what they did. They printed on their box a picture of a television, and all they did was stick it on the box. And it just so happened that televisions and their e-bikes occupied about the same amount of space, and it was about the same weight. So the couriers had no idea that it was an e-bike. They thought it were televisions. And this resulted in an 80% reduction in the carrier damage. 80% reduction in carrier damage. And all they did was print a picture of a TV and stick it on the box. And the customers just love this. So all the Van Moof customers love this. And now this is a thing for them. So they print these pictures of TVs, they stick it on the box, but it's for their e-bikes. And this was an innovation for them. Okay, I'm going to give you a second example on rolling luggage. So before 1970, the only way for you to move your bags was you either carry it or you would hire a porter to lug it for you. And in 1970, a guy named Bernard Sato, who was the vice president of United States Luggage, became the inventor of the world's first wheeled luggage bag, which was patented in 1972. And just for an interesting point, we sent people to space, to the moon, before we had rolling luggage, which is really funny. But if you might wonder, how did Bernard come up with this idea? So in 1970, he was actually on a trip. And so he was literally moving his two heavy suitcases through an airport after returning from a family vacation. And while he was at customs, he observed a worker moving heavy machinery on a wheeled pallet effortlessly. So he observed that, hey, this person is able to move really heavy stuff effortlessly. So he turns to his wife and says this. He said, that's what we need for luggage. So Bernard goes back to work the next day. He took a wardrobe trunk. He removed the 4 wheel casters off that wardrobe trunk. He got a suitcase and he got a strap. And so he put these wheels on the suitcase. He attaches a strap. And this is what he said. I put a strap on the front and pulled it and it worked. And there was born rolling luggage. So he observed this machine, this customs worker, at customs, this worker with heavy machinery. He sees it, he gets inspired, he goes back, he uses existing resources that he already had, and boom, here is rolling luggage. And he was the inventor of it. Now, I want to share with you a yummier example from Papa John's. So this was a LinkedIn post from a friend of mine in February of this year. And she wrote, "This is hands down my favorite Papa John's menu innovation yet. Kudos to Kimberly Bean, Tom Smith, and the entire team." So in January of this year, Papa John's announced a new menu innovation, which was cheese on the bottom of their pizza. Cheese on the bottom of their pizza crust. So they took Parmesan cheese and they slapped it to the bottom of the pizza crust, and that was a new menu innovation. And this is really genius because I don't know if you're like me, I normally turn my food upside down because the tasty stuff is then touching my tongue, which is yummier that way. So I normally would actually used to turn my pizza upside down so that the cheese and everything was on my tongue, which is where the taste buds are and it's yummier. And now because Parmesan cheese is delicious, they put it on the bottom of the pizza crust. And this is brilliant. And so here's a quote from Kimberly Bean. "We have taken cheese where we've never had it before, flipping the pizza over and putting it underneath the crust." And here you have Papa John's latest menu innovation. All they did was put an existing resource, which was Parmesan cheese, put it on the crust, and menu innovation. And I want you to think about, what do these examples show? It's that anyone can innovate. Everyone can innovate. All right. So I hope that you're feeling inspired by now. And so what I'm going to share with you now is how you can get started on this wonderful journey. So we're going to move into some actionable steps that you can take. Research shows 75% of companies say innovation is a priority, but only 20% are ready and equipped to actually innovate. So this is a pretty big disparity between these two numbers. And why is there a gap? And there's a gap here because people have not learned how to become an innovator. It's something that can be learned. So in order to close this gap, you have to learn how to become an innovator. And again, to remind you, innovation is a teachable mindset and skill set anyone can learn. So quick points as we start this. This is a journey just like anything else, right? You're embarking on a journey to learn innovation if you so desire. And over time, you will gain confidence. You become stronger at it, just like if you're weight training, you're building some muscles, you will gain confidence and strength over time to be an innovator. And I think it's exciting. I think being an innovator is one of those most exciting things because you are literally creating a new future that you want to see happen, and you're going to be bringing it into fruition. So it's so exciting. It is so, so exciting because you get to do this and your organization benefits, you benefit. It's just the best thing ever. And it kind of looks like this. This is a picture of what I believe the innovation journey looks like. So today we're kind of in the bottom corner in awakening, but there's so much to learn to actually be an innovator. It's not going to just happen in a blink of an eye. There's going to be a journey that you take. And again, here we are today, that I call this awakening, that you can believe that you can innovate and it's possible for you. So here's 5 things that you can do right now to get started. And I want you to start applying these principles to your own work. Don't do this with other teams or departments. Start this with your own work for you. So the first thing I want you to take away from this is that you need to make time. If you do not make time to innovate, you will not innovate. I'll say that again. If you do not make time to innovate, you will not innovate. Innovation takes time. And you need time to see opportunities. So Bernard was able to see an opportunity because he was in that custom line, right? He observed what was going on, he saw that worker with the machinery, and that inspired him to come up with rolling luggage, right? You need time to think differently. Like, innovation literally does take time. Status quo doesn't take time because we're already doing the same things that we're doing, right? To think differently about it literally will require more time. You need time to have white space, right? So, another way I like to say this is for ideas to visit you. Elizabeth Gilbert is famous for talking about how ideas will come visit you, but if you're too occupied, they'll go visit someone else. So, you might have this, maybe idea floats into your head, but if you're too busy, then it disappears. And so you need time to actually do this and to actually innovate. So I would love for you right now to put on your calendar time to innovate. This could be something once a week. It might be a lunch break. It might be an afternoon, but I want you to put this on your calendar. Innovation time, whatever you want to call it. Innovation time. I'm excited to create the future time, whatever that will actually enable you to start innovating, give yourself time to think differently, white space. Put this on your calendar. So, and I would encourage you to do this on a frequent basis. If you can do it once a week, I'd encourage you to do that, or if you can more, do it at a lunch break because you already have that built into your schedule. All right. So the first thing to do is to make time to innovate. The second thing is to learn the innovation process. And it looks like, and I'll talk about this in more detail in a second, but the innovation process is an iterative learning process to problem solving when the way forward is unknown. So if you are given a problem at work and you're not sure what the solution is, innovation is a great way. The innovation process is a really great way for you to actually move forward in that, because a lot of times when we're given something new and it's unknown, it feels scary and we're not sure exactly what to do. But having the innovation process actually helps give you confidence to navigate those uncharted waters and step into the unknown. And this process literally can be used for anything. And I really mean this, yes, anything. So you can use this for process improvement. You can use this in legal. You can use this in operations. You can use this in financial services. You can use this in IT. You can use it in learning and development. You can use this in talent in HR, and you can pretty much guess it anywhere. So innovation can literally, this process can be literally used anywhere. You can even use this in your personal life at home. Maybe you need to innovate a process at home with your kids or family vacation planning, whatever it is. You can apply this to anything. So let me break down a little bit more what innovation is all about. So you start with understand, and understand is really around understanding the problem that it needs to be solved. And this is really important to thoroughly understand, who does this affect? What key audience or audiences does this affect? And you need to understand what their pain points are, which I'll cover in the next few slides. But you really want to understand the problem to solve thoroughly before you move on. Once you do that, you move to dream. And dream is my favorite part of the process personally, but it's really around creating ideas. So once you have a problem to solve, you want to generate ideas to solve that problem, right? So in dream, that's when you're coming up with lots of ideas, and it's really exciting. This is where you're dreaming of the possibilities for the future. So you're coming up with tons of ideas, and then eventually you will pick one to move forward with. And what do you do with these ideas? You move it to prototype. So prototype is really around putting some structure, if you will, to these ideas. You're going to make it a physical prototype, or maybe it's a digital prototype, but you're adding some meat to the bones, if you will. And I like to think about prototyping as kind of like where the rubber meets the road, because understanding the problem to solve and coming up with ideas in dream is kind of cerebral. So prototype is where people can react to the thing you're working on, right? You're like, here's the idea that I have, here's the physical prototype, what do you think? And so this really helps to accelerate how people understand what you're trying to work on. And then once you have a prototype of your idea, you need to test it. So you will actually get this in front of, customers, your audience, whoever it is, and you want to see, does this prototype work? But more importantly, is it solving the problem from understand? Is it actually, making good on what you're hoping to do, right? Does it actually solve the problem that you're designing this for? If it doesn't, you need another prototype, but you're testing this with the customers or your clients or your key audience to make sure that this prototype works. And so once you've tested this, you're going to go through a cycle of prototyping and testing to refine that product. And eventually you go to implementation, right? So the goal is to ship this out, to get it to everybody, putting it into reality, right? This is that part of that creating a new future. So you go to implementation and you get it out there. And I wanted to tell you that the most important thing for you to do is to start with understanding. You really want to spend the time thoroughly understanding the problem to solve. There is a great quote from Albert Einstein, and he said this: if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem, which is understand, and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. So in other words, he's front loading a lot of time to thoroughly understand that problem, to ensure that it is a real problem before starting to ideate. And a lot of us can have the temptation to just come up with ideas and then just go to implementation and run with it, right? But Albert, I like to say, was a pretty smart guy, one of the most smartest people on the planet. And he spent the diligence and the due diligence to make sure he was thoroughly framing up the problem to solve. So make sure that you spend the appropriate amount of time to understand. Okay, number 3, you want to identify people's pains. So here's some questions for you to think about. If you're doing this for yourself, it's like, what are your pain points? What are things that really bother you? What irks you? Like, what frustrates you? If I were to punch you in the side and you wince, you're like, ugh. What are things that really get under your skin that you'd love to have solved? What makes you wince? So these are some things to kind of help you understand what people's pain points are. So you will know these intuitively for yourself, but if you observe like your team, say you're innovating for someone else or your customer, you want to think about what their pain points are, because these are clues and signals that there's an opportunity to solve something for them that would really make a difference for them if you were to do that. And the way I want to encourage you to do this is to look for what I call adaptations. So adaptations is like duct tape. So adaptations are people's hacks around a pain point that they experience, but they don't know how to solve for that problem, so they duct tape it, which is an adaptation. So in this photo that you see here, this is in a conference room in an organization, and what you see on the ground here is it's a raised they're raised plugs. And the problem with raised plugs on the floor is that people trip on them because you don't expect to have these things elevated off the surface. And so people put these sticky notes on these plugs to say, hey, I'm here, I'm an elevated surface, please don't trip on me. And so their hack to alert you of this problem was a good old friend, the sticky note. So that's an adaptation. This is like the duct tape version of trying to solve this. This picture here is my garage. So my house faces south, and I've never had this happen in any of the homes I've ever owned until this one. But because my garage faces south, my house faces south, anytime it's really sunny, the garage will go back up because the sunlight is hitting the sensors, and the sensors think that there's an object there. So this is really frustrating for me because whenever I'm trying to get out of the house, the garage would just go up and then I can't close it. So I either have to like close the garage manually and then run to the front, and it just a big mess. So I got a good old toilet paper roll and a zip tie, and this was my adaptation for this problem to solve for me. So this is Leo's duct tape version of solving for this. So if you have a house facing south and there's sunlight shining, this could work for you. But this is my adaptation. And this is what people do, right? We live with pain because we don't necessarily know a better way or better solution for it. And so we just adapt. We use duct tape, and these are the solutions that we come up with. But if there was a better way to solve these problems, that's innovation, right? And those are these are clues that there's problems that people have, and there's an opportunity for you to solve it. So I want you to look and identify people's pains. Do this for yourself, do this for others. All right. And how do you do this? Number 4, you observe. The way you identify people's pains or see pains is by observing, right? And so observation is what really allows you to uncover pain points and discover opportunities for people. And it's a really powerful way to find insights. So again, if Bernard Sato didn't observe the worker with the heavy machinery on the pallet, he would never have come up with the inspiration for the rolling luggage bag. And here's another reason why observation is really important. So I was at a conference many, many years ago, and there were 2 research that were talking about why observation was powerful, and they shared this story. So they were in an elderly woman's home, and they were in her living room, and they were there to basically uncover, they wanted to know, is it difficult for this elderly woman to open her prescription bottle? So they're interviewing in her room, in the living room, and she's like, no, it's not. And they're like, really? It's not hard for you to open your prescription bottle? She's like, no. And she's like, and so they were like, okay, could you show us how you open your prescription bottle? And she's like, sure. She's like, come with me to the kitchen. So the 2 researchers and the elderly woman, they go to the kitchen, and she had one of those, those meat slicing machines that you see at the grocery store. So she fires it on, she takes a prescription bottle, plunks it down, and then whoop, off goes the top of the prescription bottle hat. And she's like, see, I don't have any problems with opening my prescription bottles, and the 2 researchers are like stunned. They're like, clearly there's a problem here. But again, she had an adaptation. She had her meat slicing machine, so she could just, open it up and there's not a problem for her. But clearly she had a problem. So observation is really important for us to do, because sometimes people will not accurately describe the pain or the challenge that they're facing. And so by observing what happens or watching what happens allows us to have insight, right? So those 2 researchers learned that day, yeah, she does have a problem opening prescription bottles, but she has this meat slicing machine that can, get around that, but that's still a problem, right? It's also highly unsafe. So observation is a really powerful tactic that you can employ to start seeing opportunities. So here's how you do this. You pick an activity to observe. Maybe it's a client interaction, a customer interaction that's going on. So choose something that you want to observe. And then grab a notebook and pen or some sort of recording device, maybe it's your phone or tablet, so that you can actually jot down what you're seeing. And then just sit and observe. Like literally just sit and observe and watch what's going on. And then as you're doing that, record down what you're actually seeing. And then review what you've captured. And then lastly, be surprised by the insights, and you have a couple options here. If you're observing people doing something, you could choose to try to talk to them after, like, hey, I noticed this was going on, tell me more about that, right? So to observe as often as you can, notate what you're seeing, and see where you want to go from there. Maybe you're doing some more observations, maybe you're talking to the people that you've observed, but this is a really powerful way to see problems that people experience, how they're adapting to it or not, and you can be surprised by the insights. So observation is one of the most powerful things you can do, and it's easy. Anybody can do this. Anybody can do this at any time. The fifth thing that I want you to know is that, to innovate is to create ideas. And I'm going to give you two prompts that I really like. But first, a quote from Dr. Seuss: think left and think right, think low and think high. Oh, the things you can think up if only you try. And so this is my favorite part of the journey, is to kind of create that new future. And so there's two prompts I want to share with you. The first one is called WMBATW. And this stands for what might be all the ways. What might be all the ways. And I love this prompt because it suggests that there's so many possibilities out there, right? What are all the ways in which we could do this? It's sort of an inspiring prompt. So you might use this like, what might be all the ways that we can create better training opportunities? What might be all the ways that we can engage our customers differently? What might be all the ways that we can re-envision how we're doing this process, So that's a really good prompt to utilize. And a more popular question is HMW, which is how might we? And how might we is like, how might we do training? How might we, you can use the same prompts. I like what might be all the ways because it's very expansive. It's kind of pushing you to think very broadly about all the things, but how might we is a great prompt as well. And they're both questions. So our brains love to answer questions. They're inspiring. It leads to possibility versus using statements to people. So when you're coming to create ideas, use these questions because it'll inspire us to think of all the different possibilities that could exist. Okay, so in summary, the 5 things that you can do is make time. So really make time to innovate, learn the process of innovation, identify pain, observe, and create ideas, right? So to recap, what we covered today is that we talked about what innovation is. It's creating a new future by transforming ideas into value, why it's needed. We talked about, it helps us de-risk the unknown, maximize our investments, as well as we need to either disrupt or be disrupted. We talked about what innovators do, which is creating and seeing a new future. We talked about who can innovate, which is everyone. I gave you 3 examples of everyday innovation. So I shared with you the Van Moof story, the rolling luggage, and Papa John's. And then I just gave you 5 tips on how you can get started. So in summary, innovation helps you create a new future. Everyone can innovate, and you can become an innovator. So to close, I'd like to share with you what I wrote called the Innovators Manifesto. We are the innovators, the disruptors, the pioneers. We explore new thoughts and ideas. We know there are limitless possibilities. We see things differently and believe boldness should be celebrated. We are never afraid to push boundaries and challenge the status quo because we believe there's a better future. We long for everyone to bring their passions and ideas to work. We desire for everyone to fully utilize all of their creative gifts. And we want everyone to see that anything is possible and realize that they have the agency to create a new future. This is an invitation for everyone to innovate. This dream is for the intern, the new grad, the analyst, the admin, the professional, the leader, the executive, and everyone in between. We are calling to you. Innovation wasn't meant to be a buzzword. It wasn't meant to be something for those people. It's meant for everyone. Innovation is a call for change, a call for disruption, a call to create a better future for yourself, your team, and your organizations. Your best thoughts, your best ideas are waiting to be unleashed. So rise up, innovators of today and tomorrow, so that your passions can rise, your ideas can soar, and you can create the future you want to see today. Will you answer the call? Thank you very much. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Leo. That was great. I've got a bunch of questions for you. You spoke of Kodak not embracing digital and becoming a dinosaur. Basically, It was a Darwinian moment for Kodak. Are we seeing a similar situation with generative AI in various industries, including education, basically not innovating and possibly becoming dinosaurs as well?
That's a really interesting question. I read an article about autonomous innovation today, and there's apparently a conference coming up on that. And I think AI can do a lot for us, but I'm also concerned that if we rely on it too much, we lose a sense of our human creativity and the things that we're able to do. So I think I would look to AI to supplement the things that don't need to be done for humans, but to rely on it exclusively to do the work for us, like creativity and things like that, I would say we need to be careful of. But definitely, there's so many things that AI can help with. I mean, as an entrepreneur, even my writing to summarize articles that I write, I use AI just to write the summaries instead of me re-summarizing after I spent an hour, hour and a half writing an article. I use AI to help summarize it quickly, right? So I think there's ways to leverage this technology that's incredibly powerful. I think we're all trying to learn and figure out how it's going to be utilized. So yeah, I think if we're not keeping up with how it's being used or it can be utilized, we will be kind of in that dinosaur state. But I also think we shouldn't rely on it also to solve all the creativity issues and innovation issues that we have too.
Well, you do agree that the innovation aspect of AI is in the prompt engineering.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the innovation actually happens.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too because I think AI is a really good collaborator. I think it's great to, if we find ourselves getting stuck or, sort of the dreaded white page and we need prompts and inspiration, if we're not kind of doing that as a creative practice ourselves, AI is kind of like a great super friend to help us start generating that creative muscle. And I think we just leverage it for the use cases that we need as opposed to just rely on it to do everything for us. I think it's a great inputter, give us creative prompts, thinking, differently, that kind of thing. I think it's a really powerful tool.
Could you share a little bit about what you did at Chick-fil-A around innovation?
Yeah. So at Chick-fil-A, I was hired to make innovation better. And the way I approached that was I led a program called Innovation Coaching. So it was a program around, hey, if you're a normal employee and you'd like to learn about innovation, I taught those folks how to be innovative. So it was a program that I led, which I really loved because I saw a lot of transformation happen in people. And I honestly had, before that, I didn't even notice the power of innovation could have on someone's individual life. And so I saw that, innovation isn't separated from personal and professional because you as a person change, the way you look at things change. So that was some of the work I did there. I also redesigned their innovation center. So I thought there was a better way to make innovation a thing. They had an innovation center called Hatch, which is a 30,000 square foot facility, and it was like a doing lab, which is a pretty traditional approach to innovation centers. And I thought, what if we could also teach innovation in this lab? And so I redesigned the space to do both of those use cases.
In a situation where ideas that you might have aren't allowed to be expressed in an organization, how do you get those ideas out?
Yeah, that's a good question. Before I knew I was innovating, what I used to do was if there was a problem that was bugging me, I still would work on it even without the permission from people. Like I would even be told no, but because I thought there was a better way to do it, I would actually prototype the solution on the back end. So I was still accomplishing my work. So, I was still doing the work that I was supposed to do, but I found margin for myself to actually kind of create this solution. And I realized some people actually need to see it. You can talk about a new idea or something you want to work on, but they might not understand it. And so sometimes they're not saying no because they don't think they just can't visualize how that might work. So when you have a working solution, be like, look, this was a problem. Here's a working solution. Could we use this? I've never had people tell me no, even though they told me no originally. So sometimes it takes you finding the margin to work on it, still accomplish the same tasks. But sometimes no's are not really no. It could be just no from a lack of understanding of what you're trying to say. And so getting it to a prototype and testing and making sure that thing works, that often solves a lot of that challenge.
Consider this an alternate or a complementary definition of innovation, and that is recognizing the dots through the noise and being able to connect those dots where no one else has been able to.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great one. One of the traits of innovators is the ability to connect dots. So it's taking things that are unlike each other. For example, I'm looking at my background, maybe that heart and a light bulb, what could those two things create together? And so what innovators often do are they're able to combine things together. This principle is known as associative thinking, and I actually developed a workshop on this because it's actually not that understood how it works. Steve Jobs actually referred to this in his Stanford address, where he was like, he took a calligraphy class when he was at Reed College. And then when he was at Apple, he had no idea why he took that calligraphy class. He just thought it was cool. But when he was at Apple developing the Macintosh, that's when that came back to him. And he wanted a computer with beautiful typography. And so he was able to connect that doc then, but he didn't even know why, at the time. And so he says that you can connect the dots looking backward, but you can't forward. But I have a graphic design degree, so I've been practicing associative thinking for decades. So there's actually a way to leverage that ability to, or increase the possibility that those dot connections happen.
Is there any particular current market or sector or industry where you see a huge amount of innovation happening, more than others?
That's a good question. I mean, where I sit, I see innovation happening everywhere, which I'm actually delighted to say, because it should be in all industries, because everyone needs the ability to think differently, to have new ideas, to create a new possibility or a new future. I was actually at the innovation festival from Fast Company last week in New York City, and they were talking about innovation in legal and legal policies, which I thought was fascinating. They were talking about, there's a new way of voting on budget. It's called participatory budgeting. And so people as old as 11 years old and plus can actually weigh in on how budget's being spent by the government and municipalities. And so I think innovation should touch all industries because we need the ability to think differently. I think we can typically see in tech, that's where a lot of innovation tends to happen, because there's money there. Tech enables new possibilities for people. So we generally do see it in tech related type places, but innovation, I think, is important to be utilized everywhere.
This was incredibly informative, Leo, and I can tell by the responses that the audience really appreciated it. I want to thank you for taking the time to address our audience here. We have an amazing speaker coming up next month, Top Gun pilot and 4-time Space Shuttle commander, Hoot Gibson. Actually, he was a space shuttle pilot on 5 missions, but 4 of them was as commander. Hoot presented our commencement address at the Westcliff 2023 graduation, and he was awarded an honorary doctorate here as well. There were so many students who really wanted to go up and ask him questions about his career at NASA that we decided to invite him back for a one-on-one and Q&A. He has some amazing stories, including one mission that came very close to breaking up on re-entry, just like the Columbia did in 2003, claiming the lives of 7 astronauts. Hoot was red-knuckled all the way down to Earth because he knew he was in jeopardy. He knew there was something seriously wrong, but he couldn't tell ground control. We'll find out why next month, along with a number of other very, very interesting, fascinating stories that he has from his missions to space. By the way, he later worked on the investigative team exploring the reason for the Challenger disaster on takeoff. And we'll also see some of his Reno air racing competition, which is when he's flying 650 miles an hour, 30 feet off the ground around pylons. Very scary, a lot more dangerous, he said, than going up on the space shuttle. But that's next month. So let's see if you can make that October 26th. Now we have a few announcements. I'd like you to try to register to volunteer at our Inclusive Sports Day, where Westcliff athletic teams will lead exciting drills and games that are sure to be fun for all. This is being held at the Irvine Great Park on October 3rd. We have the Research Colloquium 2023. You have an opportunity to attend this prestigious colloquium and hear from students with groundbreaking research, as well as faculty members with a wealth of knowledge to share. This event will be held virtually on November 1st. And finally, watch for the next release of the Westcliff International Journal of Applied Research coming November 27th. The journal is more than just a platform for publishing. It's a way to amplify your research's impact on a global scale. So I'll see you all next month with Top Gun pilot and Space Shuttle Commander Hoot Gibson. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you again, Leo.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.